So a brief background about me. Yes, I came all the way in from Philadelphia. It was amazing. It was a 90-minute direct flight. I was like, oh my gosh, I wanted a nap. I didn't get one. But 10 years ago, I graduated with my doctorate in physical therapy, and my focus was intensive care units of hospitals, and that's where I began at Penn. And then I encountered patients with Parkinson's who had deep brain stimulation surgery, and it just all of a sudden it was like my brain exploded about Parkinson's and Parkinsonisms and everything under that umbrella. And then, of course, in my typical fashion, I just focused on it with everything and found a very wonderful clinic as part of Penn, where I've been ever since. Day to day in the clinic in which I work, where there's 2 physical therapists, an occupational therapist, and a speech-language pathologist, all I see day to day are people with Parkinson's, PSP, MSA, or CBD. Every day for the last decade, and I'm still this enthusiastic. And the reason for that, there's the clicker. The reason for that is because it is every day me challenging myself to help people the best way that I can and to learn from the person that I'm working with. Number one, to try to attack function, how you're moving, but then also put the fun in function, as I often say. That we're not just talking about preventing falls, but we're talking about your life and how to still enjoy life, even with this diagnosis that no, there is not yet a cure, no, there is not yet a medication that works, but yes, you do have a sense of control, believe it or not, in the way in which you move, in the way in which you feel your body. Everybody right now, we have full stomachs, but feel your body, feel your posture. You've been sitting here for half a day. Sit taller, feel where the weight is through your hips. Feel how your feet are on the floor. Feel how you're breathing. Are you taking a deep breath? Are you filling those lungs? Are you exhaling? Are you relaxed? Okay, are you falling asleep? You better not be. All right. When people come in, and the amazing thing now is that we've coined a term called prehabilitation, which means I don't want to see a person in my clinic when the first fall has happened. I want to see the person as soon as they're diagnosed or as soon as they notice that they're having problems with their mobility or something has changed, which is why on top of, even though I said, oh, this is all I see, I will oftentimes get people who come in from their movement disorder specialist with a diagnosis of gait disorder of undiagnosed origin, and they just not yet have found a diagnosis, or probable PSP, probable Parkinson's. My biggest thing is to look at people's movement and to truly identify what's going on, but more so to get the person to identify what's going on. What do you feel? Do you feel that you've slowed down? Do you feel that your weight is leaning more to the right? Do you feel that you don't have energy and that you have a high level of fatigue? But the hardest thing for me to do is to get people to consistently think about their movement, okay? Don't just get up out of the chair and run for the lemon tart, since there aren't that many of them, but think about how you're getting up from that chair. Think about the chair that might be in your way on the way out, or that person coming towards you as you're moving. So basically thinking before you move, which, as great as that sounds and as effective as it can be, that's asking people to do a lot. Because basically I'm now asking you to no longer let your movement be automatic, which is easy, and instead you've got to think about it, and think about it all the time. So that's where I have to make it a little fun for you. Okay, so my biggest thing, and just to give an example as we go in, and you know, I really thought when I came up here, I was like, oh, wearing heels was not a good idea. But, for example, thinking before you move, Trish said, all right, there's a lemon tart, go to the table next to you. All the time when I see people get up, they get up and they're going to the table next to them, right? So what happened there? There wasn't thinking, the thinking was on the lemon tart. Versus what I train people and work with people to do is you're gonna stand up first, that's part one. Feel your body, take a breath, then you turn, okay? I should move this, sorry. And then you turn, okay? She had to come all the way up to get me to see that, all right. But that's about thinking it step by step. What I often say to people is that you've become a run-on sentence, and you need to put the commas back in your sentence. And I was a person in school that put too many commas in all my sentences. There is, you know, I love this slide because the ability to move is not lost. You can move. It's how you activate your movement, okay? There's a motor sensory disconnect where all the time when I have people come in and say their spouse or their family member or friend is with them, I'll have the person say, I have no problem getting out of the couch. And the spouse is just sitting there going, no. What? Yes, yes. And the issue is the person, you've never thought about the old way you used to get off the couch. So this is still you and your automatic way. All right? So there's a motor sensory disconnect because the brain begins to accept that this style of PSP movement, CBD movement, MSA, or Parkinson's-like movement is your new normal. My challenge is to get you to identify that, no, that's not your new normal, and you can change that. But it's going to require you to exaggerate your movement, make your movement bigger, think of yourself taller, express yourself in your face more exaggerated, and you will feel goofy doing that. But that's okay, because basically we're recalibrating your movement. And we can teach people to do this. Cueing helps. So what's attention? I think I got all your attention right now, so this is good. But attention can be both internal and external. So as I stand here, I can internally cue, remember to breathe, because you tend to stop doing that when you talk in public. But I can also have a card here that says, remember to breathe, Joellyn. Okay, that would be an external cue. So what we're going to go over are the different types of internal and external cues that I try to teach people with, and then also find out what works best for the person, because every person is different and every person will respond differently. So if a person, for example, has difficulty taking big steps, maybe especially towards the end of the day when there's more fatigue, and you're having a lot of difficulty negotiating the bedroom, and you tend to get into these small steps, and it just makes the whole process a lot longer. We can tape lines on the floor using painter's tape, that blue tape that won't harm anything in your household, which is good. But putting those tape lines on the floor like a floor ladder and training people, it's 1 foot to each line. And that facilitates a bigger step because this is an external visual cue that's helpful to the person. Now, some people are like, oh no, I just paid a designer to do my whole home and I'm not putting tape all over it. And I say, but really at the risk of moving better, you wouldn't want to do that? So you've got to, make a compromise with those you work with. However, for a lot of people, this is incredibly effective, especially if there's a certain area in the home that gives you a lot of difficulty. That may be close to the fridge. It might be getting your feet in the right spot as you go to sit down so you don't end up sitting on the armrest like you might do often. So it can be very helpful. The other are lasers. Again, this is an external visual cue. This could be a laser pen, which I've used with some people if they get stuck or they were with me for a second and now they've gotten distracted by something else. I may put a laser on the floor and say, I need you to step on that laser. And it's amazing. Boom, the foot goes. As much as the person might have been fighting their body to get their body to move or do anything, and it redirects them. They've also made some interesting things with lasers where they're attached to canes, a laser cane by InStep Mobility. Has anybody seen that? No? Huh? Yes, a laser cane. They exist. And basically, when you press down on the cane, the laser goes across, horizontal. InStep Mobility is the name of the company. Google them, and you can go to their website and find out more about it. What about a U-step rollator? Who has heard of that? You got one. Woohoo. Okay, a couple people. The U-step, we'll talk more about it later in regards to how it helps with walking, but it also has a laser, which exists, that you can put on. So for example, it's the laser's then traveling with you, your visual cue is with you, so that when you're out in public or at a conference where you know there's gonna be a lot of people and you're gonna be sitting a lot, your focus can just go down to the laser and you step to step and it helps you advance your feet. That's another type of cueing. Imagination. This is an internal self-cue, okay? And what imagination could be is that when you get stuck, I've discussed with people, imagine something on the floor that you want to step on, okay? In Philadelphia, I often say cockroach. That's pretty disgusting. But it could be something, sandcastles, cupcakes, they're a little bit more fun to step on. But visualize something. That's actually very difficult to do, and that doesn't quite necessarily work for a lot of people. Tactile. This is something that it's very interesting for those it works with. It's either going to work or it's not going to work with the tactile cueing, and that might be that actually, I had one fellow, whenever he got stuck, he had a cane and he would hit his foot with his cane, And for whatever reason, it made him go. Don't know. I've trained spouses where they tap the side that the person needs to shift their weight away from, and that's helpful because, again, it's a proprioceptive cue. You have nerve endings there, and when they get that sensation, it feeds the brain, and then attention. Attention to do what? Attention to activate. And remember, this is an activation problem. Rhythmic auditory stimulus. I love this one from my background because music, dance. I can have a person, and we call them our curmudgeons, okay? A curmudgeon, he might, I said he, it tends to be more males who are curmudgeon-y, but he's a hard nut to break, tough guy, not that into it. I find out his favorite song, I put that on, oh my goodness, the person moves. In Philadelphia, they have a 10-mile run at mile marker 7 for those who have seen Rocky, right? Anybody see Rocky boxing? And they put on the Rocky theme song because you're running through South Philly. The whole mass of people increase their speed. Why? Did they get more energy? No. It's the music. There is some type of connection to music that our brain senses. And what is music? Music is an external auditory cue, and it's consistent. It's that tempo. And our bodies have tempo. We have an internal rhythm that's obviously skewed because of these diseases, so you compensate by using that external auditory cue. I oftentimes use metronomes, and I'm going to go to the next slide for this. Oops. I'm going to go to the previous slide for this. Metronomes up in the top right, I was just talking to the table I was with now. If you have a smartphone, you can download a metronome app for free. Okay, just type in metronome and you'll get a bunch. And what is metronome? It's not as cool as music, but there's less to think about. It's more simple. So if I have somebody who's very, very slow in their gait, and I have concerns of them safely crossing a street or even getting through a parking lot without causing the spouse to be really concerned, or I have a gentleman who's still working and he's just concerned because he feels like he's running late all the time because he's just slowed down so much. So he has actually a Bluetooth metronome, so nobody really notices what he's listening to. And he has his couple tempos. He has happy hour tempo, and we'll talk later about that. He has his meeting tempos, okay, and he has his rushed tempo. So he has 3 different tempos set. But he moves to that tempo, and it's very simple, and it keeps his attention on the tempo. Because remember, and also with some of these diseases, distractibility can be high, so you might be on task, but then something distracts you, and you forget about what you're doing, and you go right back to small steps. You make the sound louder. Nope, listen to the tempo. You redirect, and you get the body to activate to it. So here are a couple of examples. Putting the tape lines through a doorway. Sometimes doorways can be very difficult because the brain perceives that narrowing as a reason to make your movement more narrow and to slow down, which makes no sense because it's the same type of width that you were previously walking on. So why would you take smaller steps? So that is helpful. This is a MOBI laser, M-O-B-I laser, and basically what that can attach to is a cane or a walker, so you don't have to buy the one that already has it on it, and that can be very effective. I like X marks the spot. I've worked with countless people who just can't get themselves to sit in the right area, or they plop too much where they'll stop, reach, and then throw their butt down, and it's very unsafe and straining their body. So remember, part training. First part, X marks the spot. Get your feet to the spot. Makes it simple. It's a challenge. Okay, my feet are there. Now you sit. Because otherwise, if you have somebody with you constantly cueing, no mom, no dad, no hubby or wife, get your feet, take bigger steps, go to the chair. That's a lot to process versus looking at something on the floor, and that's my target. Okay? Same thing with the bed. A lot of people have difficulty, and the brain, just again, that disconnect of getting that sensory input and basically understanding it the right way, might sit too high on the bed, might sit too low on the bed. And then when you lay down, it becomes, it's hard to move. So now, no, your feet need to go here so that when you sit down, it's a very easy transition into lying down. That's another trick. The color of the external visual cue is important. So there has to be a lot of difference. For example, on this red carpet, I wouldn't put red tape. Okay, it's got to be different, all right? It shouldn't be close to color. And older people, if Above the 65, there was this article that said that the color yellow is very easily to be seen in our aging eyes. So if that has a big distinction from whatever color your flooring is, yellow would be a good one. Okay, take a breath. All right, freezing. What freezing is akinesia, okay? An inability to move or a movement block, all right? So basically what you would see is somebody walking or trying to start walking or start a turn, their upper trunk might do something and the legs begin to tremble and nothing's happening and the person's fighting it, might start reaching, then there's a fall out of it, okay, because you fought the freeze. I will tell you, I will have, the son of a person who I'm working with who's a big time freezer come in to observe the session and the son's getting all anxious and worried, you're not as close as you need to be with, my dad. And I'm like, no, he's fine. And he freezes all over the place. But all I have to say to him is, and I used to say stop. Now I just go up because he knows. But stop the motion. There is something that you have done in your movement that has caused your body to prevent it from shifting weight. All you have to think is stop, because then you're going to stand tall, okay? And what's happened is your body had stopped shifting weight side to side and was rather in a moment of shifting the weight forward. And if I have weight through both of my feet, I am unable to advance the leg. So stop. Get your weight to your heels. I can tactily give people cues to shift their weight side to side, or we'll sing a song, hum a song, dance a little bit. Take that big step. It can be effective. Now, can a person, and it can be so effective that then I have caregivers say to me, they do it so well here, why can't they just cue themselves to do it when they freeze? Well, easier said than done, okay? The brain sometimes, that's an internal cue. And some people can do it and some people can't. So no matter how many times I practice with them, okay, and they can reiterate to me, yes, stop, stand tall, shift my weight, step big, they'll still, go to that narrow space and then boom, they're in that freeze, they can't move and they can't self-cue. So then it becomes, well, we can try a couple different things because I doubt you want to be next to the person the whole time telling them to stop. So I've actually made stop signs, okay, and put them up through the house. And the person has to look at the stop sign. So that external cue, you have something to remind you, and that can be helpful. The other thing is identifying what the triggers are, okay? So if it is walking through crowds, perhaps when we break for snack this afternoon, you might stay to the perimeter so that you're not walking through people side to side, or training the person with the care partner who's with them that they walk in front of the person almost as a blocker to kind of keep the focus on the person in front of you and give you some extra space. So that too can be helpful. Okay. Other areas in the home, in terms of if you want to try first the internal cue, something that works very, very well for people is something that I call destination estimation. And it's kind of a fun game to play in where you might say, okay, to get to my bed, to the bath, I'm going to get there in 12 steps. And you count your steps. How is that helpful? Number one, it keeps your attention to your steps, okay, and not to the bathroom. Of course, if you're in a rush to the bathroom, then I would say put the tape on the floor, because to attend to counting can be really difficult. I do it all the time through doorways. People have a lot of trouble through elevators because you know it's going to close and there's that fear of it closing. So you stop at the front of the elevator. Okay, get to the back of the elevator in 4 steps, and boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're in. Or looking beyond the doorway, look for your destination. That can also be helpful. With turning, it's really important. We all have our center of mass, and we all have a limit of stability and a base of support, okay? I love educating people on this. I always say, feel your feet. What are your feet doing right now? Because the tendency is people forget about their legs and their lower half, and they're going, because we manipulate our environment with our arms, with our hands. So that's what's going to activate your movement. And so the shoulders go, and as soon as the shoulders turn away from the position of your feet, you're in trouble. Because if I wanted to turn right, and I initiate with my shoulders, I've now shifted my weight to my right foot, and I can't take a step with my right foot, which means my left foot's going to cross over, and that gives me a really narrow base of support, and then I'm going to lose my balance because gravity is an amazing force, okay? Whew, I gotta breathe again. So, something that we practice, okay, shoulders over hips. I will often cue people to that, shoulders over hips. Lead with your feet first, okay? Feet first, a common cue that I give. And that is, if you are turning right, it is the right foot. If you turn left, it's the left foot. If the person is already in the act of starting to turn and it's not good, just say stop and restart. And you start that movement. People get in trouble when they're in closets and bathrooms too because of the small space. So I often will tell people, march in place. You just march in place because number one, it's starting to establish that rhythm. You're getting your body going. And then you just turn with shoulders staying over hips. The worst that gets me every time, and I've seen it today, is with the rollator, where people don't let the rollator, you're just moving with the rollator. It's an extension of you. You don't have to push it like a cart. So as soon as you do one of these to turn, bad news, because your feet are outside of the wheels. Feet need to stay with the wheels. You turn with the rollator. Do not steer it, okay? Unless you're trying to purposely hit someone. Keep it with you and move with it. Very effective. Okay, sideways arc. What gets people a lot is spontaneous falls backwards or a lot of falls backwards. So why would you want to take a backward step? Because that's just kind of bringing on the inevitable, right? Sideways arc. If I overshoot this chair and I'm here, rather than number one, looking behind me, which what does that do? It turns my shoulders away from my feet and now I'm in trouble. But if I just turn my body, so now my shoulders are staying over my feet and I take a sideways step. Much better. I told you I didn't do well in English. Man. All right. Oh, my mother would kill me. She's a teacher. Oh, that's so bad. Oh, so the other thing, we did this, turning right, turning right. A common theme, look at the space between the feet. You should be aware of how much space you have between your feet, because if I stand here with feet close together and try to turn, I don't have much stability, versus if I stand with my feet a hip distance apart and make a turn, and I feel much more steady. Okay, so when you're washing, and often I take a wider stance anyhow because I'm tall, and if I'm leaning over a sink, that's killer on my back. Power stance, feet are wide, you have control, you have ability to shift your weight, versus when your feet are close together, you're just fighting gravity and trying to hang on to it. So that's another positive. Retropulsion. So I use that term, however, what I'm talking about is loss of balance backwards. So some people, it can be boom, you're down. I don't know why. It just happened. Other people might start to take some steps and it gets uncontrolled and they fall down. Believe it or not, there is a trigger to it. Even if you might think that you're just standing still and doing nothing. A trigger can be as simple as even trying to look up, okay? Or somebody calls your name and you turn ahead. That might be enough of a weight shift to bring your weight too far back on your heels. Your hip response and your ankle response, which are balance strategies that we have, are so delayed that they do not respond. And therefore, gravity takes over, and now the balance strategy that occurs is the step strategy, which isn't effective. You try to take steps and you go. So you got to identify the triggers. What is it? Does it happen when you tend to reach up in the kitchen for something? Is it happening when you're reaching down for something and coming to standing, which is shifting your weight to your heels and you go? Is it when you are taking a step back? Is it when somebody stops abruptly in front of you, which causes you to shift your weight back? But it all is about, and I return to it again, it's about your feet. It's about your foundation, all right? It's about your mindfulness of your movement and where your body is in space. Got it? Oh, the next one. So be aware. So rather than, and I love giving people this trick because they're like, why would I not have thought of that? When you open a drawer, dishwasher, stove, anything, the act of pulling towards you, rather than standing in front of it and pulling it this way, which might make you lose your balance backwards, just stand to the side of it. Now it's side to side, no difficulty. Same thing with, doors that you might have to pull open to you. So if you go to a door in a hallway and you start to pull it open, and especially if you have a rollator and you're somewhere for your feet to go. You're going backwards. You move the door, then have to try to get around it. Stand to the side of the door. Then you just open it this way, and you go right in. Okay? So again, it's think about where you are in space. Use that power stance. Use a stabilizing hand. So if you find that you've fallen at the fridge, put a hand on the counter. Put a hand on the fridge. It's a way to ground you. Other things, let's change the direction from backwards to forwards. So people who take a lot of stutter steps, okay, and then all of a sudden they get uncontrolled, because again, it's the effect of gravity. Triggers include reaching too far forward for something, and again, that's retraining the feet. Don't manipulate your environment with your hands. Come to your target with your feet first. So identify feet, walk to wherever you have to, and then go for it. Increasing with posture. So the more we start to do this with our body and hunch over, again, that's bringing your weight forward over your feet, and it'll give you that tendency to shuffle more. So try as best you can, and that's a lot of times why we refer people to using rollators, because it's a force to push themselves back and assist. So it opens up the posture so you can take that bigger step. You have to focus on the quality of your steps. Again, it comes down to that original comment that I had said, where you're trying to activate your movement through being mindful of your movement. So that's a quick fix for all of those things. To prevent it, no reaching, simple stuff. In more severe cases, if you have a big problem with the steering of the rollator, I do something funny with people where I'll actually put towel rolls underneath the armpits, so that if you're pushing it too far away, it drops the rolls, so it facilitates the person to press the rolls against their body, and it keeps the posture more upright, which is really good. The other thing that we'll do for people who have a lot of that spontaneous movement forward is recommending the U-step rollator, and that's because it has reverse brakes. So most of these rollators that you might see, you have to brake to make it stop. With the U-step, you actually have to squeeze it to make it go. And why that is helpful is when somebody starts to lose their balance, the natural reaction is to let go, and the rollator is going to stop. So it'll help prevent that loss of balance forward. The other interesting thing about the U-step is it weighs 26 pounds, okay? A regular rollator weighs anywhere from 12 to 16. It has that extra weight because, again, you have a force that's bringing you forward, so it's trying to stop that and slow it down. So that's a reason for that one. All right, stay moving. What is this goofy picture? I thought, okay, now it's time to talk about a little bit of fun. So in our clinic, on top of, again, retraining, bringing mindfulness to simple things from how you get up from a chair to how you turn your body to where your feet are in space, we also need to activate. You need to move bigger. And sometimes people don't know how big they are moving. So I might have you hold scarves, and you're walking with the scarves to try to facilitate more. You can see more. How far can you throw something? Can you activate that much movement? I love agility dots, often used in sports medicine, but I use them, again, it's visual. It's a color. You're moving to it. I can do cognitive type of tasks with it. We're walking big, but every time you step on a dot, you have to give me a fruit or vegetable that starts with that color. Other times you have to give me the first letter of that color, or the last letter of that color, or give me a different word that starts with the first letter of the color. So now I'm getting people to move and think. They hate me for that, but that's functional. Okay? The other thing, boom whackers, we love, and that's what these little things are called, and you can order them online, and they give a sound. So I make people whack them. We have fencing fights. I have them reaching. It's a great balance exercise. It gets them moving. It's something you can do with family. A lot of fun. River rocks I use from a balance standpoint. So how can I recreate what happens outside, inside in terms of uneven terrain? So again, I just, get people moving. And I love talking about eyes and PSP because we know that you lose, that vertical gaze. So it's really, really important right off the bat that you practice using your eyes. And what that is keeping your head still. This is actually all Post-its, but putting Post-its around the room. So as people are walking, I'm making them look at the Post-its. I'm making them find the colored dots on the floor. If a person doesn't have the ability anymore to look up or look down, training of actually turning the head. Can you maintain your balance while turning your head? But the simple act of playing I Spy or sitting in a room and practicing going to all four corners and doing that daily and repeating it is really important. Scrabble Flash is another fun thing that our OT does a lot too, as well as us. But it's basically Scrabble, but it can travel with you. But standing up, you put it down on a table and you've got to create words. So there's that cognitive dual task. It forces you to use your eyes and you're standing up and doing it. So it can be challenging from that perspective. I also know gaming is really important with our OT because even in diseases such as CBD, where you might have one affected limb, okay, that alien limb phenomenon that Dr. Porter was talking about, but being able to flip a card with that limb, attend to the task of the game. Are you sitting with good posture? Are you verbalizing your answers to the game and using your big voice? So these are all fun things that we do. And I bring up this slide because this is what exists in Parkinson's, and this is the push now of, okay, well, let's do more with PSP and CBD and MSA, because in Parkinson's, the coined term now is exercise is medicine, that people with Parkinson's can just be given medication and their disease will progress faster than if they were doing exercise along with their medication and exercise in a specific way. It is still very much important for our bodies to move. You know how bad you feel when you're sitting for a long period of time, right? And stand up. It doesn't feel that pleasant. Our bodies are meant to stay moving. And also, I love saying to people, a body in motion stays in motion, okay? The law of inertia. As soon as you start sitting more, your body's gonna want to sit more. And we've gotta stop that from happening. So even though the research isn't specifically with these diagnoses, it says nothing that you can't get involved in dance, okay, and focus. Because what's dance? Weight shifting, okay? You might be with a partner, you might be without. It's music, it's movement to music. You feel good when you do it. You can stay focused on the task, feel accomplished with it. Trekking pole walking, they've done a lot with Parkinson's. I love this slide. That's Wehab. Oh God, it's so scary. But think of what the Wii and the Xbox Connect, right? You're watching things move. It's your reaction time. You're reaching, you're engaged. It's a game. I'll take that picture away. Community-based programs. I mean, we have pedaling for Parkinson's. At my clinic, I have a boxing class. It's non-contact, but look up rocksteadyboxing.org. There's some really inspirational videos there with that. We also have a cognitive class that we have. Our occupational therapist does that. We use music all the time. Whenever people come in, and I use music to my benefit too, because I'll increase the volume to try to distract the person to see if they can still stay on task. Okay, so I use it almost as ambiguous noise in the room. But then also when a person, I need to really rev them up, I put on their power song, and that's a lot of fun. And people can surprise you with what songs they like. They tend to be contemporary. Tips for care partners as I run myself over time. So tips for care partners include, I say to people oftentimes, and this is sometimes difficult, especially as you're going down the road with years of this disease, is that this is your coach, okay? This is your care partner, and you need to identify techniques to use, because oftentimes we start to go into the area of, you're nagging me, okay? And people start to tune out other people. And that's when I use videos a lot, and I'll show people how well they move when they're with me, and I explain to them, hey, listen, all right, you're performing when you're with me, and I appreciate that because you're putting out a good effort, and you look good, and you're moving well, and your balance is good, but then you go home and you're falling all the time, and you and your wife are, head to head. So you've got to learn to move like this at home. So how do we do that? Do we start taking cues away from the spouse and do more of those external cues or reminders? Or I make you set an alarm in your kitchen that goes off in 20 minutes and you got to get up out of the chair and turn it off because it's going to keep going and you're going to be annoyed. Okay, so there's been photographs of myself and the other therapist pointing our finger. I've had things pop up on people's computer screens. Okay, I have the spouses and the caregivers, bless you, take pictures of people at home and bring them in and show me just so I can see what's happening. But the biggest thing is identifying those external cues that'll work. If they're visual and things that we can put in the house, or if they're auditory. So, and again, we're trying to simplify things. It shouldn't be you're slumped over, shift your weight back, you're moving too slow, not all those descriptors. The person might know they're slumped over. The person might know they can't move. So a lot of times we'll identify a funny word that the person has to use, and that kind of reminds them of therapy and tunes them back in. So one word one guy used was Bazenga. I don't know, Bazenga, and Bazenga worked, and the person would kind of sprout up. Another was Gibraltar, which when he said Gibraltar, I thought he said Travolta. I was like, John Travolta? But funny words, and that too can kind of spark the person to move a little better. So if and then also in public, you might not want your friend, care partner saying to you, you're slumping, you're moving slow. If they say Gibraltar, somebody will think you're planning a next trip. But, okay, it's a funny word that you can use. Again, it's kind of just being aware. If we're going a little further into there's a lot of mobility difficulties and there's falls that are occurring, it is that stop, and get the person to realize, because that motor sensory disconnect, you might not feel what's triggering the near fall. So it might be the cue of the care partner to say, where is the weight through your feet? Okay? How are you standing? What are your feet? Where are your feet? So don't necessarily tell them what's wrong. Get them to figure out what's wrong and what could be done better. That sometimes can help people learn to, we have time for questions, learn to kind of correct a lot quicker. The gait belt with handles is actually very beneficial. So if you're at a point where you are giving assist to the person, rather than pulling on their clothes and tugging in areas that maybe you should not, they make wonderful gait belts that have handles so that therefore you can hold back here, you can support on the side. It's a lot better, okay? Makes the person feel a bit more secure too. And finally, and I had to have my Rocky reference, okay? This is a team effort. You have you who are fighting this disease and you have your corner man, okay? Try to use some of these tips, not only to make your function better, but also to maintain your quality of life, okay? If you do these things, you are going to get out there, stay moving, but stay moving in a thoughtful way in order to activate your body the best that you can, all right? And I know I'm far away in Philadelphia, and I'm gonna jump to this, but you can always, that's my dog, but you can always look at that long stretch, okay? You can always email me, okay? The slides will be up on the website, and again, these are slides to reference more so to how to find therapists that are more in the States, but I know we've hosted the Parkinson's Wellness and Recovery, which includes education on PSP and MSA and CBD twice at Penn, and we've had actually a ton of therapists from Canada come. And likewise, LSVT, big certification, has been in Canada, so there are therapists that exist. It is hard when it's wonderful to get into therapy, you must. And therapists also are sponges for knowledge. Give them my email. If you already have a therapist, I welcome it. We encourage it. I am happy to share information. If you are working with a therapist who maybe does not have that much knowledge about your diagnosis, CurePSP has a wonderful document, what every PT, OT, and speech language therapist should know, okay? Have them look to that, okay? But give them my information, please. I know that was rushed. I always have a lot to talk about, so now we're gonna open up for questions.
That's great. We only have time for a few questions.
I'll be hanging out.
But you know what? We can go a little bit longer instead of having a formal break. If people need to get up and stretch and then just come back in the room, we'll have a little bit more time for questions.
Could you just go back to your Oh, yeah, sorry. Geez, that would be good, huh? There you go.
Hi. That was great.
Oh, good.
It's so energetic and it's very positive. So I'm excited about everything you said. How do you, I'm always afraid. We have a physiotherapist who's very, much more passive than you are, to say the least, but she's trying, with us, and she was excited to know that I was coming, and she said, make sure you bring back information for me.
Okay.
But I always want to, how do you know how much to push? The way it is at home is we tend to want to wait on him a lot. Don't worry, we'll get your pills. Don't worry, you sit down, I'll get that. Don't worry, sit there, I'll go do that. Is that wrong? And should I be encouraging him to get up more? And it sounds like that from what you just said.
Your intentions are good in doing that. However, let the person do that, okay? Now, falls. Okay, so it has to be supervised. If the person's gonna fall on their way to go do that, then no. Okay, obviously there needs to be more training from the therapist. But if it's more related to it just takes the person a really long time or they struggle with it, then that's when you gotta get the therapist involved in how can we make this better? Do we need to use cues? Should we put tape on the floor? So, okay, if it's the act of, getting maybe towels out of the linen closet before a shower, maybe that's where you practice the tape lines and no, I'm gonna walk and get my towel and I'm gonna go back to the shower. So try to get to do more, but do more in the safest way. In terms of, physios who might be a little bit more conservative because of the fear of falling, or they're not really sure yet, they're still learning the person that they're working with. Everything that we do with activation, you can do in sitting to start. So if you're trying to train a person to bring their feet wide and in, do that in sitting. I can translate somebody, out, in with their feet, get them going here, moving side to side, big reaches, push them so that this way they feel safe and they're working on truncal balance. And then you bring them up to standing and they're supported and you do the same thing, then you start to slowly take away the support. So have her start everything in sitting and just get the person to move more and give feedback. Yes, I'm shifting my weight. Are you shifting your weight big enough? I often tell therapists to use the scale because, again, we're trying to recalibrate. So 0 is no effort. 10 is the most effort you could give. So I will often ask my people who I work with, how much effort are you giving me when you walk? And they might look at me and go, 2 minus, And I'm like, well, that stinks. Give me a 5. Okay, now give me a 7. So that encourages the person and also they're calibrating their movement. Welcome.
Hello. I have 2 questions.
Sure.
One is, did you mention that it is harder for the patient to walk in a crowd?
Yes.
Why?
So what happens with the crowd, you see a narrowing of space. The brain perceives the narrowing of space. Likewise, the calibration of the speeds at which people are moving. Okay, that can sometimes throw off people. Likewise, if the risk of somebody bumping into you in any direction can also cause a loss of balance. So sometimes, and where we often get concerned is if somebody does have an issue in a crowd that they might not even share with their family, but it caused some anxiety, then the next thing is the next time, the family wants to go out to this really busy restaurant, they say, I don't want to go. So we want to teach strategies to try to help with the crowds.
Okay. Just one more thing. In your clinic, do you show how to get up from a fall?
Yes.
Like, do you do exercise?
Yes.
And
Yes.
specifically to make the body
Yep, for
stronger?
falls. So, a lot of therapists are under this mindset that we need to teach people how to fall. Guess what? That's not going to happen. You're just going to fall. I'm not going to teach you how to fall, okay? In the spur of the moment when you're falling, and you're going to be down. So, we teach people how to get up. And the first thing that we do is you got to take a deep breath, okay? The person needs to relax. Once they're lying down, the next thing to do, okay, is to get them onto all fours, all right, if they can. It's really difficult to get this is really hard to do in a skirt, to get the person to sit up straight and then and you're hoisting behind them. That's not good for either of you. The best thing, if they're on their side and you're trying to get them onto all fours, you're just going to have to give assist at their waist because we carry the most junk in our trunk, okay? And that's where you're going to have to lift. And then you bring a chair to the person and you bring the hands up. You can facilitate again from the waist. You're supporting them. They're close to your body, and that's the best way to help with mechanics. If you email me, I can send you a picture. Pictures are always better, and I've got a nice handout on that.
We have time for 2 more questions, and this young man from Rhode Island gets the first.
Hi.
Hi.
My wife Bonnie has PSP
Hi, Bonnie.
since September. We're in the process of downsizing our home and selling it, and we're probably going to move into a smaller home, but it's going to be built. So is there anything that I should be doing special about this home that I'm building?
Yes. So, look at clearance of doorways, okay, and width of doorways to make sure you have maximal space. Bathrooms are the tricky part because people tend to have narrow bathrooms, so make sure you have a nice, spacious bathroom, so more of a square than kind of avoid galley kitchens, okay, so don't know, which is more urban to have that kind of narrow kitchen. There's a lot more. Email
What
me.
about thresholds?
Thresholds, you want to keep them
Eliminate
as, yes.
Rugs. What about rug? Eliminate rug?
I mean, I don't want to, if you like, rugs are harder to walk on and harder to move things over.
Yeah.
So if you have, the finances to put in wood, okay, or tile or something like that, that would be better.
All right.
Yep.
Is there resources for that?
So, yes, which is why you can email me. And also, it's actually wonderful, and you're in Rhode Island, to have a home safety evaluation. So what you could even do right now before the home is built, have somebody come into the current home and look where, Bonnie, you're having some trouble, where you are right now in the house, and then what the areas of the home you like to be in. What is your favorite room? And then that therapist can kind of guide you, okay, well then this is what you need to do. Yeah, it's better to be in the space and get a sense of it.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Time for one last question. You did such a great job, and the questions were so great. Okay. One more. Here we go.
Hi, Joellyn. My name's Tracy, and I'm just wondering about footwear at all, if you can mention anything about that or if there's any information. I've heard that running shoes sometimes aren't good because they're more sticky for people with PSP, so if you could touch on that, I'd appreciate it.
Great question about the footwear, because oftentimes people come in and say, my walking is bad, it's my shoes. And I'm like, no, it's not the shoes, except for running shoes. Because running shoes, so a sneaker that is a runner shoe has more height in the sole at the heel, and it tips you forward, okay? Those are not good. It's not necessarily the rubber sole, okay? That's actually, the best thing is a supportive shoe, all right? So something that secures the whole foot. Crocs or any type of slip-ons, I ban. It's like donate them, get rid of them, burn them. I do not like them, okay? They are not good. All right, they make excellent sandals and things that secure better to the feet. It needs to attach to the foot, because otherwise the sensory, if a flip-flop or sandal is flopping on the ground, you're going to be more likely to decrease your height of your step, and that's going to get you in trouble. Again, with the stickiness, if you will, of sneakers, it's more about step height. You can get a lighter sneaker, because they make a lot of those now. But I often tell people, think of activating your hip, because what you lose is that hip flexion. So a lot of times people, when they say, oh, you're shuffling your feet, lift your feet, and the person might say, it's my shoes. Well, take the awareness away from the feet. Focus on your hips. Use your hips more for me, and start to elevate that. That's good. New Balance is actually a very good sneaker line, because they have a lot of wide toe boxes, so there's good width to the shoe. So as we age and those funky abnormalities occur in our feet, such as bunions and hammer toes and all that fun stuff, it gives you more room for that. All right, guys, thank you so very much. So good to see you.
Thank you, Joellyn. Great presentation.